you do need to identify yourself first, because that will help identify your typical behaviors and reactions and responses at whatever aspect, whether it's, in normal times or whether it's under stress or you have work or you're giving feedback, because all of this comes down to how you can deliver feedback and communicate. You're going to say, hey, listen, I'm going to check my ego at the door. Like, I need to do the work to understand like where I'm at first and foremost, because you're the one who everyone's looking up to. Because if you're not doing the work on yourself and understanding yourself, there's no way you're going to be able to teach it and push that down to the people underneath you.
Welcome to the Fitness CEO Podcast, a show dedicated to helping fitness entrepreneurs launch and grow successful gyms. Here's your host, Bryce Henson.
Before I tee up today's guest, I want to give you a friendly reminder. Give us a like and subscribe on YouTube. Write us an amazing review on iTunes. That way we can keep producing this content for you for free. So here in today, at this episode with the studio, is my dear friend, but not only friend, brother, who's the executive director of coaching and profitability. And today we're going to be talking about birds as it relates to personality styles and really how to level up your leadership. So welcome back to another episode of the Fitness CEO Podcast. And I got the man, my brother, Barrett Henson, who's the director of coaching and profitability at Fit Body Franchise. And we're talking today about self-awareness, about knowing your personality styles, about DISC and really great leadership and great execution. So that way our gym owners and soon to be gym owners can grow their businesses. Barrett, welcome to the studio, buddy.
Dude, it's awesome to be here. Even better, I get to hang out with you too. It's two birds, one stone, literally and figuratively.
There you touche. So talking about birds. So kind of to take this back, really what we're going to do a deep dive in the DISC profile. We linked up with a company called Take Flight Learning, and Merrick, who is their CEO, who shot a podcast episode. So you'll have to revert back and link it. But he really kind of gave a high level of the birds, and especially from his perspective. But I want to do a little bit more deep dive today, and then also be able to provide some practical application for our gym owners or soon to be gym owners. So that way they not only know the information, but ultimately they can, coach and lead their teams better. So first and foremost, my brother Barrett, I want to open it up. What are the four personality styles? So
DISC, I think we've all, like when you might have grown up in school, you might have had one of those previous work, employment, whatever. DISC, just the acronym that they go around for direct, influential, supportive, and conscientious. But the magic of what, Merrick and Take Flight Learning did was combine the left side of your brain and the right side of your brain, storytelling and essentially, factual information. And when you have that perfect blend of, emotional tie and factual ties or information data, man, you can create some memories and things that you can actually recall in real time. So I think, first of all, it's just magic how they did that, because previously I had taken 2 other DISC tests. And I mean, I couldn't tell you what aside from D, just because, it's a type D person, people say that kind of in passing, but man, that was like super eye-opening, because for me now, it's like, that's all I reference, around the board. And it helps with clarity, like unbelievably with clarity, not only in how you can connect with that person who you're trying to, but also your own individual perception of what's happening, because we're naturally hardwired a certain way. And it just provides so much insight into your own response, or you can anticipate that response or what's going to happen, especially when you start getting into, a little bit of an additional stress, because when you start having stresses hit in your life, you revert back to what's hardwired in your system, where we are human animals, for that to, for lack of a better phrase, but I mean, we're pre-programmed to do certain things. And that's all across the board.
So diving in, you kind of referenced the bird pairing and then the DISC. So I'm going to jump in here just with that overview and how, and to your point about Take Flight Learning, how they basically paired an analogy of an animal. And human nature, we learn by basically metaphors and analogy, and that's why it's so powerful. So the D is dominant, and that really from Take Flight Learning is eagle. Because when you think of eagle, you think of dominant, solo, flying, high, soaring as an example. So the eagle framework is really the D in DISC. The I, which is interactive, is parrot. And you think of someone who's interactive, the life of the party, really good with social engagements, connecting with people. You think the parrot, right? Who's basically the life of the party, the the parrot of the jungle, full of color and life. Then we have the S, which stands for supportive, which is, and I'll let you take the last two over.
The dove. And I think like literally when you really actually look at the birds, like the dove, and you go around the dove, the owl, the eagle, and the parrot. I mean, if I just say those to you, you instantly think of a personality type that comes to it, I mean, that's again, amazing storytelling, because you can say the story by just referencing the animal, and you're going to instantly think when I'm like, oh man, that person's a total eagle. Like you're going to know, like, boom, I'm coming at you. I'm dominant, I'm direct, I'm going right there.
So give you some celebrity examples, and whether good or bad, right or wrong, that's indifferent. We're talking about personality styles. When you think of eagle, 3 characters come to mind: Donald Trump, Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant. Like determined eagles, ready to go.
Yeah, I mean, they're results-driven type people. Like, so when you think about that from your own, I'm sure as you start thinking about, and audience, when you're thinking about the people in your life, like, oh my God, the type of person who has that sort of dominance, like, oh, that's eagle. I mean, instantly. And you can start associating your friends, your network, your husband, your wife, your kids, like they have those personal, because we all have them, and those are the core behavior types. It's just a matter of what percentage is dialed, in you, So, for us, and it's one of the things that we share is the D, which is,
You're
it's
a big D, Barrett.
But, it is like we share that D, but we also, there's, another aspect. Now we all have the other birds. It's just to what varying degree, and understanding that it will really help like paint a picture of the type of interaction you need to have with that individual where it's going to connect you guys together.
I want to go through like actually the other parrot, dove, and then owls, and give some examples, like some celebrity examples,
Sure.
like we just did for the eagles, so that way it resonates. And then I actually want to talk about our bird pairings, the storytelling, a little bit like what we learned. So I'll kind of jump in. We went through some examples with eagles, but parrots, okay? When I think of a parrot, I typically think of an entertainer. So like The Rock as an example, or Lady Gaga probably has a lot of parrot in them because again, parrot is the eye and disc, and it's for interactive. So that's basically a couple examples from your lens.
Dude, I like Elton John, man, that guy is such like, he just is a showman, comes out there, and if you want to think about like a movie that had come out recently, The Greatest Showman, when you look at Hugh Jackman playing like, the ringleader of the circus, it's just, that's the type of person who loves the limelight, who's going to get out in front and just like eat it up. And I just think every time, like Elton John, he just is like a total showman when he gets out there having a good time. Justin Timberlake like can do a whole sing, dance, have a good time, charismatic, just really helping connect from human to human aspect. It's really neat.
So let's now kind of talk about doves. And the first dove that comes to mind that everyone can relate to is probably Mother Teresa. Right?
Yeah.
Complete supporter, complete dove, and loves humanity. And not to say that the other bird types don't love humanity, but the doves have that kind of sensitive approach. So that's one that comes to mind. How about your lens?
Yeah, I mean, instantly I think of my own mother, our mother, Mama Dove, Mother Dove, as we call her, but
who birthed 2 eagles, which is wild in the story for another day.
But no, I mean, when I start looking out like Nelson Mandela, the type of leaders that are really, sure, they are going to have some driven aspects, maybe have a little bit of eagle in them, but the reason why they have that eagle is because it's coming from the place of love, love for humanity, love for a mission, love for a cause, that they are so ingrained in that cause and helping other people get there. That's going to really carry their leadership style as they go through. Because as we start talking about the rest of these, you're going to see a lot of leaders out there who might not be the stereotypical eagle. And I think sometimes we start thinking, oh, you have to be an eagle to be a leader. That's not the case.
Right. And, there's many eagles that default to that. So,
sure.
That is definitely an advantage. But to your point, it's not the end all be all. And there's many awesome leaders who are parrots or a dove and who are owls that can really harness, their personality style, towards positive in terms of leading people. To finish off with the owl, and I'll kind of bring up 2 that come to mind that are very well known, so relatable to our audience, would be first and foremost Elon Musk, who I'm a raving fan.
100%. Yeah.
Typically speaking, a lot of scientists and a lot of engineers that are really internally thinking, analytical in nature, are high owl. The other one would be Bill Gates, comes to mind as well. So that's some framework for me. What about you?
Yeah, Elon Musk is number 1. It's the first person that comes to mind. Another type of high C, like Albert Einstein, when you think about like that, process, when you're thinking about the theory of relativity, like there's so many things that are going in there. it's just that you have to account for a lot of things that are extremely calculated. So those are some of the high level ones. And, and I know we'll probably talk a little bit about just having multiple pairings and things like that. And when you look at the actual personality pairings, the cross-sectional people, they're very rare, when you see that. And
when we say cross-sectional, meaning on the different paradigm of that, basically cross, if you will. So basically the eagle, and if you're watching this on audio, is the top left, and then the dove is the bottom right. So
correct.
That diagonal line, that cross pairing is the most unique, because typically those personality styles don't favor each other.
Correct. And then when you look at the D, again, being on the left side of the spectrum, the quadrant, at the same time on the left side of the quadrant is the C, the conscientious, which is the owl. So those types of people, when you start looking at your overall profile, they're going to be very task-driven people.
Very task-driven. And interesting, I was talking with our friend Stephen Hadley, and they champion the people on the left side of the quadrant, which are the eagles and the owls. They're task-oriented, and they typically champion the business. Okay. On the other side of the spectrum, the right side of the quadrant, which is your parrots and doves, they're typically people oriented, and they typically champion the people, the team in your organization.
100%.
And you need both. You need teammates that can champion the business, and also teammates that can champion the team and clients to make this all work. So now that we've laid the foundation, if you will, of the bird profiles, the personality styles, and we'll talk a little bit more about why is this important to gym owners before we go through the practical application to our audience. I'm curious, Brother Barrett, what your bird profile is and the dominant birds, if you will, and also to be able to provide some context on most people usually have two personality styles that are most dominant and then two are most recessive. So what are yours? I'll kind of showcase mine, and then I want to talk about some observations I had from knowing you on this planet for 37 years, and really this big aha that learning this profile a couple years ago. So
so I kind of share the one D. We share that the eagle, but for me it's the C, the conscientious, the owl. That's my other, I would call factory installed, my natural self. And, it's interesting because over time, your natural self can change a little bit, specifically when you're going through big changes in your life. So you might have a big change like, hey, I change professions, or maybe there's you get married, maybe you get divorced, maybe you have a kid, there's a lot of things that can change. When you have those life events, there's a potential of change happening. But at the same time, you're still kind of hardwired to who you are. So it's not going to change all that much, but it can. And for me, the conscientious, I honestly believe kind of a little bit from our upbringing, because it allowed me, personally, to really focus on hey, how do I get recognition inherently, or how do I get accolades? And the big one is, hey, when you're successful at school, when you're successful at sports, you do that. And from a sports standpoint, it's man, I have to get so methodical at what I'm doing, learn the process, learn the fundamentals so well, so that I can be better than my opponent. And that allowed me to become a student of the game. Yeah. So I think for me, that was a big thing from a sports standpoint as well as school. Because that's how, as a child, I was looking for that, public praise. And I've kind of figured that out over the last couple of years, especially diving into this stuff, just knowing myself. And I think the biggest takeaway I've had with, going full into, the birds and disc has been a better understanding of how I'm hardwired.
Self-awareness.
And that self-awareness is massive. And I always say this, in any communication blunder you've ever had in your life, there's always one common denominator. You're the common denominator. So chances are, if there's a communication breakdown, it's because you didn't communicate in the way that you needed to deliver the message. And I'm used to, and, we've all been taught, the golden rule, right? Treat others the way you want to be treated. But that's actually somewhat accurate in some aspects, but I would argue it's wrong. The golden rule, which is treat others the way they need to be treated, and communicate with others the way they need to be communicated with. So it's huge.
That's huge. So I want to kind of dive into a little bit more of the practical application in a second, but I want to highlight your bird pairings, and then basically to bring the audience full circle on my bird pairings. Similar to you, I'm high eagle, so I'm dominant, but my secondary bird pairing is parrot, and I think that's really important for the audience to know. know, and at least, from a storytelling perspective, because all my life, I knew my brother Barrett and I, we are like half so the same, like cut from the same cloth, driven, ambitious, basically action takers. And come to find out, that's the eagle that we share. But there was always this other aspect, okay? In my family, we used to call Barrett the goober Barrett, because he would just stare into the distance. And really what he was doing from the owl perspective, he was like analyzing the situation, reflecting on it. So half of us are completely different. And that's where my parrot shines, which is the interactive, the connection point, the ability to just, show up in that showmanship, if you will. But interestingly enough, and you mentioned your bird pairings can change, I'm still not convinced you don't have some parrot in you, because especially early in your childhood, there's many times that showed. But in the grand scheme of things, that was a very big eye-opening experience when we went through this profile, realizing that we share the eagle, but your owl and parrot are really what is the difference maker. And kind of, using our other family members as an example, my sister Emma and I, our sister, I should say, we share that parrot. So there's a lot of that aspect of our personalities that are very similar, but then she does not share, at least at a high level, in the eagle. So there's always a little bit of disconnect there. So it's the same kind of example, just the opposite way. And then, of course, throw in Mother Dove, just the sweetest, most caring, loving person who birthed 2 eagles, which is still comical to this day. And then she shares some parrot as well. But to your point, I think a big golden nugget for you, and we'll talk about here in a second, for gym owners, and then really the application for coaches and client coordinators and owners. But the biggest, takeaway is knowing yourself, having self-awareness, but then also too, not only knowing yourself, but really knowing your team and the people you work with, because you need to communicate to their style more importantly. So
big time. That's
a great segue to talk really about the importance to gym owners. So why do gym owners need to basically understand this? And then can you share maybe some stories, a story or two, how maybe if you would have known, had a better understanding of your teammate, you could have put them in a position to be more successful. And I'll do that the same, after you reply.
Yeah. I mean, well, if you're an owner, if you're a leader within your organization, like you're leading people, and, leadership is influence. And in order to influence somebody, you have to be on their level. You have to connect with them. You really do. And this is so essential. Like understanding their personality is so essential, and how you can connect with them. And that's something, honestly, up until 2.5 years ago, when we really dove into this.
We're shooting this in 2022, so this is probably like 2020.
Yeah,
right?
2020, like really.
COVID.
Yeah, and I just say, like, holy smokes, I wish I would have known this pre-pandemic. Mm-hmm. And I say that because, like, yeah, I mean, you have awareness and that sort of stuff, but just not intentional awareness like now. Mm-hmm. And, statistically in the U.S., you're going to look at 69.8% or 70%, let's just call it, of people in the population are going to have dove.
Not just in the U.S., like worldwide.
Worldwide. Yeah. They're going to have a dove. And one of the behavioral styles of dove, or a supportive, is that they're reluctant to change, because they understand that change can impact somebody, because they're high people pleasers. They're high people. They want to be around people, and they want to make sure everything is like nice, no friction.
Don't rock the boat.
Don't rock the boat, baby.
Everyone's taken care of.
And dude, look what COVID did.
Yeah,
like COVID just rocked the boat, and especially in the gym space. I mean, we were not built for an online platform. We had to become an online platform overnight.
When you say we, meaning Fit Body Bootcamp.
Yeah, Fit Body Boot. We had to go from in-person sessions to virtual. We had to still. I mean, circumstance doesn't change responsibility. Our responsibility is to take care of the health, wellness, and fitness of our clients and their mental health. And we had to pivot overnight. Now, I mean, for me, my high task side, high eagle, and then high, owl, like it's like job needs to get done. Let's go. And it was a lot of hard right turns, hard left turns to make sure we were aligning and putting out the product, the virtual sessions, the live Zoom sessions. And it was a change to our coaches. And to me, I mean, thinking about that at the time, I had 7 people on my staff, of which, like, we had not gone through the personality tests during that time frame. But, statistically, 70% of them, so you're looking at least 5, are going to have that dove, which means they're not going to be really receptive to change, even if all the data says do it. So, I mean, for me, it was let's go. And I know, like, looking back, that just caused a lot of friction, and I could have and should have done a better job of asking or presenting the issue and then being like, hey, what do you guys think? Instead of being like, this is what we're doing.
And that's a good point to bring up, because it's not that you wouldn't take that action, but it's also the approach, the communication, 100%. Providing visibility. And it's important to have a feedback culture to begin with.
Yeah.
But especially if you know your team is primarily made of doves, you're going to want to lean into that a little bit more, because if you don't, they're going to be stirring inside. It's kind of like that duck analogy when they're basically, doves are kind of usually cool, calm, and collected. They're above the water, but their feet are just kind of like really causing a havoc. And that's what's going on internally and emotionally. And then when they leave the meeting, when they leave your L10, when they leave, your, influence on a day-to-day basis, at the gym, they're going to take that baggage with them, and they're going to, connect with their spouse and be really stressed out about it. And you obviously, as a leader, you want to avoid that.
100%. And that's, always like, it's casting vision and, understanding that in that vision, your vision needs to fit the vision of the rest of the team, right? And that means it needs to fit their personality too. And you need to account for that. Because if you can do that, they're going to have way more buy-in, even if the change is not comfortable. And that was, the biggest thing I learned. I went, hey, full ham, here we go. This is what we're doing. And it was the right decision in order to do it. All the decisions, as I look back, gave us the highest probability. What I didn't take into account was, how did that make the rest of the team feel?
Yeah.
And, looking back, and that's just, had I known myself as well as I did, I could have maybe said, hey, let me take a hot second to think about this. And how is this going to impact the rest of my doves on my team? Because this change is not going to be comfortable for them. And, it's one of those things, like huge learning opportunity, because oftentimes when you start going through this, really diving in, again, stress and pressure is really gonna magnify the natural tendencies and traits. So for me, in that stress and pressure of your business is shut down, the government has shut everything down, I need to continue to keep this business going, not only for my clients, but for my team, because I want them to have gainful employment. This isn't going to stop. It was objective, find the solution, which is the right decision. I could have had a little more art and a little more tact that went with it. And just I would have known that a lot of my tendencies in that pressure are coming off aggressive, even though it's not intended to be aggressive or anything like that. It's just assertive in my opinion, but looking, now is probably aggressive.
And the reason that's important also too, to provide some context to our audience, is eagles typically are very direct, and under stress, they can come off as abrasive, as an example.
Oh, yeah.
And especially a dove who's in the exact opposite side of the quadrant typically is going to tend to feel that, sometimes, especially in excess, an eagle's communication can be abrasive.
What's up, my friend? Bryce here. Now, you might know me as the co-host of this podcast and the CEO of FitBody. But what many people don't know is that I actually began my journey as a FitBody franchise owner. Now, being an owner, I wake up every day absolutely doing what I love. I live my passion. I help people transform their lives and have both financial and personal freedom. And it's for these reasons and many more that other owners join the brand and open their own FitBody locations too. So if you're looking to build a highly profitable business, take charge of your life, and create an impact in your very own community, then opening a FitBody gym might be a perfect fit for you. Now, to see if a territory is available in your area, as we have very limited spots due to our incredible growth, go ahead and visit our website at fbbcfranchise.com to complete an application. Well, thanks, and back to the show.
Barrett, for me, there's many aha moments, and one that I just shared about you and, my relationship with you and my relationship with, our family. But aside from that, from a working perspective, I had our San Marcos location, which is in North County, San Diego. And one of my head coaches, his name was Jake, and just a fire-breathing dragon, salt of the earth dude, such a great guy. Consider him a close friend to this day. And he's the life of the party. He was high Parrot. When you walk in that facility, the energy, the music, the vibes, he's connecting with people. Everyone loves Coach Jake. That's just really, what it came down to. And that's a very common quality of, someone who's high Parrot, who's high interactive, right? They are the life of the party, just like a parrot is the life of the forest. Now, the opposite quadrant is owl, is conscientious, which are typically reserved. They're very analytical focused. They're great with details. My wife, Tatiana, she's high owl. She's also high dove as well. But what I learned in that process is anytime I put put Jake on the mats working with people, our organization is going to win 10 times out of 10.
Totally.
But then there's other work that still needs to be done. And in that period of time, of course, our accountability chart, we follow EOS and Entrepreneur Operating System here at Fit Body Bootcamp headquarters, wasn't really flushed out and put down to the level that is today. So at that period of time, I had my head coach, Jake, who's full Parrot, making magic on the mats, making magic with client interactions, but then also doing a lot of admin work as well. And that just doesn't favor him. He's not, naturally style, his, detail oriented. Neither am I. I actually lack owl and dove, and our running joke on my team, and you have this in spades, is I stack myself with owls because that detail oriented, personality style is so valuable to me because it doesn't come naturally to me. So to kind of put a bow on it, and I want to hear a little bit more from you, Barrett, on this, but ultimately in hindsight, I would have put Jake completely on the mats. I would have literally offloaded all his admin, duties, and Jake, crushed it, in his 4 years of working with me. But in hindsight, it probably could have had a little bit longer shelf life because towards the end, I could just tell it dragged on a little bit, and rightfully so, because that didn't fit his style. In the same, I would have been the same in that particular position. So for me, that's a very practical application of the importance of a gym owner, the importance of a leader, knowing yourself, but also knowing your team to put them in the right situation.
Yeah, you absolutely need to. And not to say that he couldn't do it. He obviously did it for 4 years, Not that you can't. It just requires more of the battery, just like you could, but do things on the C side, the owl side, being conscientious. It's just going to require way more focus, way more energy. And that's just like, trying to run a battery in cold weather. It's going to tap it real quick. Mm-hmm. So your excitement about stuff is just going to diminish. And if you do that temporarily, okay, you can help bridge the gap, but if you're trying to put a, high Parrot in a admin style role where you're doing a lot of data entry, a lot of, spreadsheets and things like that's going to have a real quick run rate on that person because it's not their wheelhouse, and your job as the leader is to put the right people in the right seat. Mm-hmm. That's going to be beneficial for their skill set and the type of personality that they have.
And tasks that will give them energy, to your point, that will fill their cup, that will charge them up, like Jake freaking on the mats, that fills his cup, his energy. And to your point, which I never heard the analogy of a battery in cold weather, when you put him or anyone else, high Parrot, low owl, in a very analytical role, it's going to drain that battery really quickly.
And I share this personally because I'm naturally not a high Parrot, but I can turn it on. And we all can turn on any one of the aspects,
yes.
You can. And I think that's really, really, really important, for everyone to know. It's just going to require more battery. It's going to require more energy, more focus, more top to bottom. And for me, when I get out and I'm coaching or I'm, presenting at, some of our workshops or World Conference, I get up there and I get so fired up because it's the D that takes over. Yes, there's I that I have to tap into, but after that, holy smokes, it's I'm physically exhausted because at the end of the day, it's an output that I need to deliver and I know that I have to tap into that. But if it was doing it multiple days on end over and over and over, my battery would be drained really quickly, which again goes back to the importance of knowing the people that you have and then putting them in the situation that's going to make them super successful.
So I want to highlight a couple more, natural fits for our business, for the gym business, for the bootcamp business. And then towards the end, I'm going to provide a little context to be able to provide some practical application and takeaways. So that way our audience can actually apply this into their business or their soon to be business or Fit Body Bootcamp when that launches. So from your lens, Barrett, we talked about high Parrot, are really good with coaching. What other personality styles typically from your lens complement a strong coach within our brand?
An eagle, obviously, because they're results driven. Hey, they want to, because it's their pride that I'm going to give you the best session because they're outcome driven, right? And you also have the dove. The dove love people. Mm-hmm. They care when Mrs. Jones, Mr. Jones is trying to get that extra chest press or whatever rep that they're trying to get, they can have that opportunity to connect with them on an emotional level, to encourage them, for them to be their best self. So that does, bode well. Now, that doesn't mean that an owl cannot be a great coach. It's just going to require a little bit more energy, especially if that's your primary focus.
What about form coaching? Because I agree with you 1,000,000%. Usually when I think of a coach, I think high Parrot. Eagles, to your point, can bring the intensity and the fire on the mats. Doves can also be really, really strong coaches. They typically thrive in relationships. So it takes them a little bit longer to kind of warm up, if you will. But once you get them warmed up, then they can be really long-term assets, and they're very loyal to that perspective. Owls typically don't bring the energy. So typically, and we have two types types of, coaching position. We have the on the mic coach or mic coach, and we have a floor coach. And the mic coach is basically leading this session, bringing the energy, bringing the fire. And the floor coach is basically on the floor correcting form. Mm-hmm. So what I found is why owls, typically speaking, don't bring the fire, if you will. They make for really strong floor coaches because they're technical savvy. They look at the human mechanics. And I think there's a lot to be said for that.
100%. And I think, one of the big things that, we coach on behind the scenes is really understanding the workout programming that we're putting out. And, we program it in a certain way to make sure that clients are staying safe. And owls are extremely great at programming because they're going to get into the X's and O's, like behind the scenes stuff, the exercise science. They also understand what are the highest risk exercises very quickly. Mm-hmm. So, you start looking at a combination movement or a deadlift, a hinge, which puts a lot of pressure on the back. Like they're going to know, inherently they'll have a higher probability that they're going to be like, boom, that's the first station I need to be at to make sure everybody's taken care of, because they literally spend that time. It's so important to them with the programming that, yeah, of course. And going back to form for all the reasons that you stated. Any one of the personality types can really tap into their zone of genius within the respective aspect of the session. It's just a matter of understanding. If you have somebody who's a very high owl and you put them on the mic over and over and over, like it's going to be draining for them. Wear them out.
And after they can't do it, it's just going to drain that battery quickly.
Totally. And that's why somebody like that, you might want to have them taking over some programming type stuff, maybe some nutrition coaching because they're really dialed in, or they're doing some client coordinator type, back end things.
Which leads me to kind of the last bullet point before we provide that application to put a bow in this particular episode is, our client coordinators. And our client coordinators oversee the administration aspect. So they're, filing paperwork, executing the admins, following up with clients in the database, typically very detail oriented. From that lens, and, client coordinators, the top line person, the admin, basically reports to that person depending on the size of your camp and, growth and your staffing needs. But typically speaking, someone who is high owl, who crosses all the T's, dots all the I's, follows through, detail oriented, good with, computer technology, et cetera. In my experience, that lends itself really well to an owl. So from your perspective, I'm curious on your feedback there for client coordinator admin, and then maybe any other bird pairing styles that comes natural to that type of role.
Yeah, I think the owl is really great at optimizing processes, so when you start looking at things and why they're so strong in the client coordinator role is because, more often than not, if you're an eagle like I am, or you're outcome driven. What's the outcome that you're trying to do? Hey, I want to make this as seamless for the client as possible. Mm-hmm. So when you're creating a process, a follow-up, process to make sure you're doing checking in on clients, owls are very good at creating that process, outlining it, detailing it down, and then teaching the team, making sure that your entire team knows the process, and not just knows the process, but why is it important? So I think that's a really, really, not to say that you can't do it again, the client coordinator, if you don't have a little owl in you, but it just bodes itself really nicely, pairs up really nicely because of the expectation of what you're doing or what the outcome of that role is. It's interesting to look at, and I just get fascinated by it too. Because as you start interacting, with the entire team, because oftentimes you are going to have, a client coordinator who can also moonlight as a little coach, and maybe back and forth. But, putting that person solely in one position, it really comes down to knowing thy person that you have and putting them in a position to be super successful that, their skill set and their natural self lines up with.
And the last bullet point from a sales perspective, because sales is the oxygen of your business, typically from my lens, the type of personality styles that does really well. Parrots are really great with connecting people, so that's a default to them. To your point, eagles are outcome driven, so from a sales commission perspective, that lends itself. For doves, they can also be great as well. They need, again, more time to kind of ramp up and really learn the scales, the script, et cetera. So, those are just kind of, things to look out for when you're hiring, a salesperson, to come to the organization. And also, not to say that an owl can't be really great at sales. Elon Musk, the richest guy in the world, he's pretty good at sales as well. But he also, too, manufactures the process. And typically, an owl is going to study the process. They're going to have a very, very, strong look at identifying human behavior, understanding, where the client is struggling in terms of nutrition or the workouts, et cetera, and be able to provide some good prescription and coaching, which will help and lend itself to the sales process. So again, from my lens, and I guess the value of the bird pairing, any bird pairing can do a specific role. It's just what they naturally gravitate to and what's going to take more energy or less energy from the outcome.
When you start looking at the actual pairings and you really start dissecting your team and just who you have, you understand who can work really well together. And this is something like, you kind of alluded this with sales, your best salespeople statistically are going to be the Parrot eagles. Like statistically, they work very well with eagle owls. So it's one of the reasons why you and I work as well, as we do together. And then vice versa on the other side of the spectrum, like it goes the same route. So because oftentimes they have that shared bird profile, they can really connect over that profile and like how they operate, what the expectation is, but then they make up for the opposites that go again across the diagram, which is very, very strange when you do see a high eagle and a high, I wouldn't say strange, but high eagle, high dove, or the opposite side, the high parrot, which I would say is very challenging with the high owl because they're so opposite. And there's only really, when I think about this, one of those people that I can really kind of cite, and that would be
Brittany Carter, for executive director of operations. She's the most colorful, engaged person from a parrot perspective, but really like her work and zone of genius is very high owl.
And that's like, that one is traditionally the most rare that when you see that, because that's two sides of the far coin.
The different spectrum. All right. So we got only a few minutes left. Let's put a bow on this. What's the practical application? So we basically like laid down the foundation, gave some good coaching tips to our audience. So that way, if they have better understanding, the need for them to become self-awareness and also to understand, their team and their personality styles, their team better, so they can put them in the position to win. What are steps that a gym owner can take right now to basically start implementing this and seeing results from a better leadership perspective?
If you haven't done so already, it's like $50. Like, take the test. I mean, know thyself first, because if you know thyself, like it's really, really, that's the starting point.
And that's a standard application and process that we have in our organization. And just over since 2020, it's been a huge game changer to our success.
And then it starts, I would say, honestly, at home, because like, the home, like in your own home with your husband, wife, kids, like understanding who they are, because you can connect with them better, on an emotional level, a relationship level, because that's the same process you're going to bring into your team, because you do need to identify yourself first, because that will help identify your typical behaviors and reactions and responses at whatever aspect, whether it's, in normal times or whether it's under stress or you have work or you're giving feedback, because all of this comes down to how you can deliver feedback and communicate. It boils purely down to this. And I always say, like, well, how bad do you want to win? How bad do you want to win at whatever it is you're looking at?
Spoken like a true eagle.
But how bad do you want to win? Because if you really want to, you're going to say, hey, listen, I'm going to check my ego at the door. Like, I need to do the work to understand like where I'm at first and foremost, because you're the one who everyone's looking up to. How you respond, how you go, they go. So that's the first things first, because if you're not doing the work on yourself and understanding yourself, there's no way you're going to be able to teach it and push that down to the people underneath you. And you're just not going to have buy-in. And then exposing your team to it too, and educating them, because it's not just about the information. It's what do you do with the information, and then how do you have regular ongoing connection points, which for us, like one of the biggest innovations we've had in some of the trainings behind this is the application. How do we apply this with coaches? We go around doing our trainings.
Where does that show up in our training? Just
we have the innovation of our elite training workshops, which are 3-day events that we invite the entire team, and they're traditionally, spread out, geographically located. We do them here at HQ, but we invite. I mean, we invite, everybody's welcome to come, so we can give that training. And one of the segments that we do is application, and it's beautiful because we oftentimes, take somebody's natural pairing and have them operate on the opposite side of the spectrum. So somebody who's high eagle like ourselves, we're forced in this like training to operate as a dove, because the dove, that is not how we operate.
That is not factory installed.
So,
all right. So knowing yourself first, taking the test, and ensuring that your family takes the test. It starts with your family. Ensuring you have a process for your team to basically taste the disc profile as they're being onboarded, sharing that information with your team, and then continuously training on it. And of course, if you have the value and the backing of a franchise system like FitBody Bootcamp, this is factory installed in terms of our processes and supports and trainings. But regardless of whether you're a FitBody Bootcamp owner or not, these are some tangible takeaways that you can basically apply to yourself and your business to grow your team, grow your business, grow your leadership.
You know what I say about that? And this is because they give you a booklet. They give you a PDF, and I think it's either page 24 or 26. I can't remember. But I mean, when you start looking at the do's and don'ts for you, like, man, it's like, dude, are they reading my mind? Like do's and don'ts, or what potential development areas you should be working on. And one of the things that we also, teach our coaches in the franchise system is, hey, listen, the potential areas that you need development on, here's what you're going to do. You're going to highlight one, ready? And you're going to highlight it. And then you're going to tell your facility leader, you're going to tell your owner, that's the one I'm working on. And I'm going to work on them one at a time, because if everything's a priority, nothing's a priority.
Well, I think my friend, my brother, this is a great way to end this segment. And my friends, I know you got a ton of value. This has been game changing in our business. So I'd highly encourage you, don't just learn this, basically execute it and implement it. It's going to really make a big difference in your business. And as always, if you got a ton of value, give us a like on YouTube, give us a subscribe, and drop your biggest takeaway in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. Barrett, appreciate you, my brother. And my friends, we'll see you in the next episode.